I think, again, going back to the incentive structure of this team, they are strongly against the concept of rebuilding. So anything that kind of puts them on this pathway for a multi-year losing stretch, that's something that ownership wants to avoid strongly. So while I do think that at least Troy Weaver is very much into the draft and would love a high draft pick in this draft class, I think that's 100% true, and I think they would love. I mean, I think they would love their own pick back, for example. But um, I do think that some of those trade constructions for their key players probably have to feature sort of these young blue chip style players already in the league that can grow with their younger set of players, but are still good enough to compete. I would expect them to search. I mean, look, they when the Eve Messi trade rumors are going around, the most common guy rumored for him was Benedict Mathurin. Mathurin is kind of in that category of that young vet. He's coming up into his second deal. He's shown flashes with the Pacers, maybe in a change of scenery that he can really, really blow up. We'll see. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily happening with the Clippers, but to give you the kind of like style of player that they might go for is that young guy with upside that can become a running mate for their core player. But I do think, like, for a guy like Trey Murphy, it would have to be a combination of the young players and picks. Whereas with Zion, it may just be like one or the other. I don't think the league values Zion very highly. Yeah.
First, why do you think like Zion? I think obviously we all like have an idea why Zion's value isn't as high, but like, what do you think just in terms of why his value isn't as high as maybe a fan would think for a player who, yes, he hasn't impacted winning, but he has all the intangibles to impact winning. And then you mentioned this team doesn't rebuild, but it sounds like they're maybe following the path of the Washington Wizards under Tommy Shepard from a few years ago when he had Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma, and Bradley Beal, and he said, "We're going to build from the middle, building from mediocrity to a contender." And I think most people have seen that. I don't think there's a proven a champion that has ever done that from that model. What's your thoughts?
I think I got to think about this. I think we've seen successful middle builds. Houston Rockets, especially under Morey, have pulled off a number of different iterations of the middle build. The pivot that they had going from the Yao Ming era, and Kevin Martin and Louis Scola and all those players, and they picked up James Harden, and you got to be in the right place at the right time, but they transitioned very seamlessly. The Pacers are another team that have historically refused to bottom out. Halliburton was the 12th. Halliburton was a trade. He wasn't even the 12th pick. He was a trade, right? They went from the Sabonis and Turner era straight into the Halliburton era, but they've done it in the past with where they take these young vets as sort of these second draft guys with Malcolm Brogdon. Even Victor Oladipo and Sabonis were second draft guys that they were like, hey, like, we're going to trade Paul George. We're not going to get any draft picks. We're going to get those two guys. And they had a bunch of playoff appearances with those guys. And then, like I said, they transitioned to the Halliburton era. The Boston Celtics, of course, have been able to sort of outsource their rebuilding, which I think what David Griffin intended to do. Some of these Milwaukee picks that the Pelicans have traded away, I think were done with that intention, right? They were supposed to sort of be the well that kept on running while Zion was heading into his prime. No, they don't really, they have that top 4 protected version of that swap next year. It's a complicated one. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it, but the middle build is tricky. And I think any kind of team building philosophy you take, like, there are more paths to failures than there are to success. I think it requires a lot of ingenuity, a lot of, honestly, there's luck, of course, but I think if your processes are right and you have a real good investment in like the data side of things, you can sort of spot where the wins and the margins are going to be, and you can take those gambles. So we'll see if they're going to be successful. We'll see. Whether it's too early right now for us to make any grand sweeping comments on their process. Like, moving forward, we can only speak on what they've done to date. Obviously, a lot of what they've done this past offseason doesn't lend a lot of confidence, but maybe, that's them. Hey, like it didn't work. We're going to pivot really quickly. And all of a sudden they do, they do strike gold and maybe they make the right set of moves this summer. It's certainly possible. It's out there in front of them. It's going to be difficult for sure.
And to reiterate, what's your thoughts on the low value for Zion Williamson, where it seems like Trey Murphy and even Herb Jones might actually have more value around the league than Zion?
Yeah, right. Sorry, I forgot you had asked that question. I think Zion's value is directly related to his availability. If he had played 70 games a year for the last 5 years, there would be no question about if this guy is valuable or not. He probably would have multiple accolades under his belt. There'd probably a lot more people employed with the Pelicans that have gotten fired or let go in the last, few years because they'd be making the playoffs, they'd be winning games. But unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case for him. And the league is again like everybody else. Hey, show us that you could stay healthy. Prove it. Prove it's not just a fluke. Prove it's not just this season type of thing. And although he does have protections in his contract, which make him a more valuable get than John Morant, who doesn't have the same protections in his contract, it's still, no one's going to give up premium assets for this guy unless he can prove that A, he can perform at that all NBA level, and B, he can do it for the course of a season without getting hurt or even multiple seasons.
Completely. You are what you can prove through your availability.
Just with Yves Missi, like last year, his rookie year, he played pretty well. Like he was getting a lot of doubles, and this year there's since been some of that, but he hasn't getting a lot of playing time now. Obviously with Queen and Zion's been playing a lot more. And then he during the trade deadline he was apparently on the block. Like, I know he's also like earlier we were talking about there's a new regime, so they wouldn't even think twice to kind of trade him if they feel like it would help the team long term. What are your thoughts on? Do you see a future in New Orleans, or because there's a lot of guys that can use someone like him, like just a rim runner and just block shot, and those are like the prototypical like Luka type of bigs that teams like the Lakers would want.
Yeah, it's interesting.